This video is sponsored by Normandy 1998 and Ash. We pick up with Ben, Max, and Kevin aboard the Rust Bucket, bound for a good fishing lake a few hours outside of Bellwood. For once, Gwen is not with them, as despite only being the first Saturday of the new school year, she'd elected to stay home and study, and while Ben is quick to mock this, calling it typical dweeb behaviour, Kevin and Max are both disappointed. Figuring they will need snacks for the trip, Max pulls into the local grocery store run by Mr. Bauman, a middle-aged gentleman who Ben warns his best friend to watch out for, since he's headed in for him ever since he was a little kid. Patiently, Max suggests that Mr. Bauman just doesn't like it when his sense of order is disrupted, and Ben at times can be a little rambunctious. Shaking his head, Ben retorts that's not it. Mr. Bauman's just a grump. Though all the same, he follows his grandfather inside with Kevin in tow. As Max goes to pick out something which will no doubt be both weird and horrifying, the boys decide to go look for some regular snacks, quickly coming across some Sumo Slammers Crunch cereal, though when Ben grabs the box from the shelf he comes face to face with Mr. Bauman, who snaps at him not to pour the merchandise. Even for Big Bummer Bauman, this is an awfully harsh reaction, though Ben pays it no mind, as he and Kevin spot something even stranger, a small pink rabbit man entering the store and chowing down on a tentacle on a stick. Figuring this must be some alien troublemaker, Ben is quick to spring into action, dialing up his new favorite alien feedback, and whipping out his head tendrils to grab the guy while Kevin coats his fist in wood from a shelf, and barks at him to spill his plan, unless he wants to become the world's fuzziest punching bag. However, before the boys can continue their interrogation, Mr. Bauman yells at them to put the customer down, even calling Ben by name, with Max explaining that the old shopkeeper is actually known for stocking alien goods and trading with off-worlders, hence why he, Max, may have bragged to him about Ben's watch and Kevin's heritage. Bashfully, the boys release their captive, who it seems is indeed just a regular customer, buying some goods and paying with a strange crystal in a tube before being on his way, though unfortunately the next visitor to enter the store is not nearly so benign, that being Volcanus, who attempts to extort Mr. Bauman before recognizing Kevin and going on a rampage. Showing their return to normalcy hasn't dulled their fighting skills, both Ben and Kevin go on the attack, with Ben blasting Volcanus with an electrical current while Kevin drives a wooden hammer blow into the Detrovite's knee, though this is not enough to stop Volcanus, who fights back, quickly wrecking the shop until he realizes Mr. Bauman is nowhere to be seen, at which point he announces that he'll get Tennyson and 11 next time, before storming off. Looking between each other, the boys question what that creep's up to this time, though shaking his head, Max replies that if his hunch is right, he's after that canister of Element X Mr. Bauman had, and if that's the case, then it looks like they'll have to postpone their fishing trip, since they've got a villain to catch. Fortunately, Max also knows just where Volcanus' next destination is, that being the old subway which was once an iron mine, since from their first run with the intergalactic thug, they know that iron ore is required to turn Element X into a powerful explosive. Thanks to some quick thinking and a bit of luck, it is the trio of heroes who are the first to encounter Volcanus, doing so before he can corner Mr. Bauman, and allowing Ben and Kevin to finish up their fight with no fear of breaking things. Due to this, the boys decide to cut loose, especially Kevin, who thanks to upgrading his wooden fist into a stone one from the mine wall is able to lay some serious smackdown on Volcanus. In fact, there is a certain brutality to the way in which Kevin is hitting Volcanus, often cutting in front of Ben in order to get another blow off on the Detrovite, evidently enjoying himself. Due to the euphoria of using feedback, Ben is oblivious to this, though the same cannot be said of Max, who quickly grows trouble, to the point when Volcanus is finally knocked out by a stony uppercut from Kevin. The old man urges the boys to head home, stating that he'll handle things from here, since from the look in Kevin's eyes, he's not entirely sure the boy would be satisfied with a simple KO. Sadly, it seems Kevin's use of excessive force is not limited solely to extraterrestrial enemies, as a few days later when the new school week begins, it does not take long for the boy to find himself in a fight. Admittedly, his reason for fighting is a noble one, as getting up to their old tricks, Cash and JT waste no time in bullying Ben, who is forced to take it, having matured enough to know he cannot use his alien powers to get back at them, no matter how much he might want to. Seeing his best friend in peril, Kevin is quick to step in, attempting to use his status as a 6th grader to intimidate them into standing down, though this is unfortunately unsuccessful, with Cash trying to look tough by grabbing Kevin's shirt front and tauntingly asking, "Or what?" This is a dreadfully poor decision, since before the words are even fully out of his mouth, the older boy retaliates with a right hook to the jaw that knocks Cash to the ground with a painful sounding thud. Naturally, such actions will not be tolerated at school, with Kevin soon finding himself with a 3-day suspension, a fact which only fuels his ire, as he was just standing up for his friend. So much so that when Max comes to pick him up, since his mum and stepdad Harvey are both still at work, the black-haired boy is practically radiating rage. Though he hates to admit it, Max cannot help but be reminded of how Kevin was when they first met, with his recent acts of violence even matching his attitude towards fights during the first few weeks before he learned to harness matter absorption. In fact, everything Kevin's done of late is highly reminiscent of his energy highs, so much so that when Max pulls up outside the boy's house, he tells him to wait a minute, as he wants to ask him something. Having all the time in the world for his father figure, Kevin asks what's up. While taking a deep breath, Max looks the young man in the eye and asks point blank if he's been absorbing energy again. As he says this, he makes sure there is no recrimination to his tone or expression, as he remembers Devon telling him how intoxicating the sensation can be, and so cannot blame a child for falling back on old habits, especially during a stressful adjustment period like the one Kevin currently finds himself in. However, when the scruffy youth speaks, it is to ardently assert that he hasn't. Gaze still locked on Kevin's eyes, Max sees no sign of deceit, though he does find hurt, and more growing anger directed at the old man for not trusting him after everything they've been through. Placatingly, Max attempts to assure the boy that he wasn't trying to accuse him of anything, he's just concerned about his well-being. Though evidently not wanting to hear it, Kevin storms out of the rust bucket without a word of parting. Wanting to make sure the boy is okay, Max calls the Levin household that night to speak with Kevin's mother, asking if she's noticed anything about her son that he hasn't, though surprisingly, she claims that while Kevin was a little moody over the weekend, she put that down to disappointment at the fishing trip being delayed, since both last week and tonight he's been his usual self. Though confused at this abrupt change, Max is glad to hear that Kevin's back to normal, and so choosing to give the youth the benefit of the doubt, collects him alongside Ben and Gwen when an urban assault vehicle begins rampaging through Bellwood. To Max's relief, it seems that Kevin's mother was right about him, as throughout the chase he is no different from usual, joking with Ben and serving as something of an intermediary between him and Gwen, so much so that when the pair argue over whether to use upgrade or magic to bring the tank down, Kevin is able to settle the dispute, telling Gwen to let Ben try first, as the spell she's planning to use destroys machines while they just want to stop it so it can be returned to its rightful owner. Seeing the logic in this, Gwen does in fact stand down, allowing Ben to disable the urban assault vehicle without issue, making this a net win for Team Tennyson. Figuring that maybe Kevin's prior behavior was just teething problems from settling back into civilian and family life, Max lets his guard down and resumes treating all three kids normally, with him being pleased to hear that Gwen will be able to join them this weekend, meaning everyone will be together for the fishing trip. Unfortunately, when the ex-plumber had thought of everyone, he had not expected Dr. Animo to be among the members, as shortly after leaving Bellwood the next Saturday, the team are ambushed by the mad scientist along with his mutant frog. Knowing they can't leave this creep to his own devices, the heroes then proceed to engage him in combat, with Max whipping out some plumber gear, Gwen using her spells and keystone, Kevin absorbing some asphalt from the road, and Ben transforming into feedback. Together they are more than a match for Animo, who soon flees, though as he does, Kevin urges Max to go after him, since they can't let him get away, that hint of malevolence in his eyes once again. Naturally, Max refuses this request, with this setting Kevin to seething for the rest of the drive, though this is not where it ends, as for the remainder of the weekend the boy seems on edge, growing increasingly agitated at the most minor of inconveniences, and snapping whenever someone asks him what's wrong with him. Having been with Kevin since before his change in demeanor, everyone is at a loss for what has caused this shift, with Max having confirmation that the boy did not absorb any energy while on board the rust bucket. Thankfully, by the start of the following week, Kevin is back to normal, as though nothing had happened, with this normalcy continuing into the next week, and the weeks that come after, much to everyone's relief, as Kevin is slowly able to settle into his regular life, doing decently well at school even if he finds himself at odds with the classroom setting, enjoying reconnecting with his mother, and even hanging out with Ben and Gwen on the weekends. It is for the most part an idyllic, if perhaps slightly mundane existence, with the only alien activity in Bellwood being Lucy coming to stay for a while, so her parents can visit the Null Void to resolve an issue regarding Mr. and Mrs. Mann seemingly never arriving following their arrested Camille's wedding. As with their meeting at the wedding, Lucy gets on great with both Ben and Kevin, and while Gwen isn't as fond of her boisterousness, she still enjoys having another girl to hang out with after a summer spent trapped in an RV with two boys. During this time, the episode From Hedorium to Eternity would normally occur, though here it is skipped, since after doing some research into the episode, the means by which the scare appeared are rather convoluted. Apparently, following Ben's reacquisition of the Ghost Freak transformation at the end of the third season, Azimuth removed the ectoneurite DNA from the codon stream, with this removed portion of Zaskier housing his consciousness, thus allowing him to return to life, at which point he enacted his scheme to have his fellow ectoneurites travel through the transmat portal to Earth where they would begin possessing humans. However, since Ben did not reacquire Ghost Freak here, none of this happens, and it is instead a time of peace in Bellwood. However, no peace can last forever, with this one being broken by the biggest of bads, Vilgax, having come to Earth to seek his revenge against Ben for hurling him into space back on Xenon. Fortunately, this time he is without his army of criminals, though he is still more than capable of causing trouble on his own, falling back on an old favourite tactic as he attacks a populated section of town so that he might draw Ben out. Fortunately for Vilgax, this works, with Ben as Accelerate engaging the Tyrant in combat, though due to having been in class when he saw the smoke in the distance, he had been forced to go it alone, hoping the others would see it too and find their own way to catch up with him. Making use of Accelerate's speed, Ben is quick to land a flurry of blows on the alien warlord, though reminding all why he is among Ben's deadliest foes, Vilgax merely shrugs this off before delivering a swipe that knocks Ben off his feet and leaves him vulnerable to be grabbed and transported to the Chimeran's ship, which at least in a small mercy is still landed on Earth, not too far away. Knowing better than to give Ben access to his hands, Vilgax's first order of business is to bind the boy, hanging him upside down, and declaring his intent to be rid of the Tennyson brat, and claim the Omnitrix at long last. Having heard this all before, Ben is rather blasé as he mocks the squid-faced alien, stating that he'll be out of here in no time, all the while straining at the ropes around his wrists until finally he is able to free his hands, at which point he jeers that he's going to introduce Vilgeek to a new friend of his, Feedback. Slamming down on the watch, Ben suddenly finds himself as the conductoid, and so begins raining down energy blasts on Vilgax. As expected, this forces the Tyrant to adapt, as he's never fought Ben in this form before. Though keeping his menacing cool, Vilgax leers that Tennyson is not the only one with a new pet, revealing an aquatic squid-like creature that grabs Ben and drags him into its tank. Due to being submerged, the boy cannot even use electricity to break free from the monster's grip, lest he electrocute himself, though thankfully, it is at this moment that Gwen, Max, Kevin, and Lucy bust in, having witnessed Ben be abducted, and use some plumber tech to track him down. Seeing Ben is in trouble, Lucy goes into a humanoid sludge form and hastily blasts the squid creature with some mud, forcing it to let go of her cousin, while Max and Gwen rush over to pull him out of the tank. Meanwhile, Kevin proceeds to coat himself in metal from the floor of Vilgax's ship for the inevitable fight ahead, though this time when he does so, something interesting happens. Energy begins to crackle across his hand, similar to how it would appear when he had some absorbed and intended to fire it as a blast. Having been on the receiving end of one such blast in the past, this gives Vilgax the slightest moment of pause, but this is all Ben needs to get back in the fight, launching his own energy attack right at the villain, and as Max and Gwen's eyes pass from Ben to Kevin and back to Ben, the source of Kevin's strange behavior finally clicks into place. Nonetheless, now they have other matters to attend to, such as beating Vilgax, and with them all combined, it is not long before the Chimeran warlord wisely chooses to beat a retreat, leaving Team Tennyson victorious. As both Ben and Kevin revert to normal, with the latter's energy dissipating as his metal coating does, Max takes a moment to fill the boys in on what they've learned, or at the very least theorized with strong evidence backing it up, that the reason Kevin has been acting like his old self is that as an Osmosian, he's always absorbing trace amounts of energy via osmosis, though when Ben becomes feedback, the amount of residual energy in the area skyrockets, meaning those trace amounts start adding up into something dangerous. Though due to Kevin not discharging the energy in combat like he used to, it instead stays with him, slowly running down like a battery, hence why it takes the boy a few days to get back to normal after being around feedback. Curiously, Kevin asks why the energy only started appearing now, though it is Gwen who answers that one, stating that from what she knows, this is the first time Kevin's coated himself in metal while feedback's present, since that's what drew the accumulated energy to the surface considering what a strong conductor metal is. This probably also explains why Kevin kept his head this time, since the metal acted as insulation, keeping the energy on the outside, while his wooden concrete forms, which are bad conductors, kept it in, where it could do damage to his psyche. This raises the question of what to do, as Kevin can't spend his whole life coated in conductive substances, with Max suggesting Ben stop using feedback, since while he knows he's his grandson's favorite, it's just too dangerous, so this might have to be a sacrifice he makes as a hero. Getting a little heated, Ben protests that it sounds like his grandpa is saying it's his fault this stuff has been happening to Kevin, causing the old man to stammer that he didn't mean... Though, before he can finish, Kevin speaks for himself, stating that he thinks Ben should keep using feedback, since while it's true there is a risk, if he can use what they've learned, he might be able to combine his two types of absorption to something really awesome that'll make him a better hero. Grinning eagerly, Lucy promises to help him with this, adding that it's lucky he has her around, since unlike Ben and Gwen who acquired their abilities later in life, her alien powers are innate like Kevin's, so she understands them and him better. But that's not the only reason, as what he's trying to do is very similar to what she had to learn to do in order to adopt her human form. She then reverts to her true and open form, with this rapidly filling the room, and forcing everyone to take a step back as she explains that this is her natural state just like Kevin when he's not coated in anything. Next, she shrinks down to the form she used during the fight, becoming humanoid in shape but still sludgy in consistency, while adding that this is like Kevin when he's absorbed matter or energy, as it's one level apart from her true form. Finally, she reverts to the form which they know her best in, the blonde-haired girl who to all the world seems human, stating that this is what Kevin's trying to achieve, since she's layering two powers on top of each other, shape-shifting and camouflage. Only now do the kids realize how impressive it is that Lucy maintains this form constantly, with the girl grinning that this is what she wants to help Kevin do, reach a point where not only can he use his powers together, but he can do so effortlessly. Grin forming on his own face, the young ruffian replies that he'd appreciate the help, shaking Lucy's hand when she offers it, only for it to turn to a mass of mud that he has to wipe on his pants while she lets out a snorting giggle, having been unable to resist the prank. Nonetheless, Lucy is good to her word, working alongside Kevin after school, on weekends, and even some weekdays when he decides to cut class, figuring this is far more important than anything he might learn in school, with it coming as rather welcome news when they're told that her stay in Bellwood will be prolonged, as her aunt and uncle are still missing. Happily, Lucy asks if this means she can join Team Tennyson for their planned trip to Mount Rushmore when the reconstruction is complete, since after getting to know Joel and Grandpa Max, as well as the rush of fighting Vilgax, she's decided that she wants to be a plumber, and where better to visit than the Earth Branch's HQ. As this is going on, Ben is not slacking, as having some misgivings about Kevin and Lucy's plan, Gwen had come to him suggesting that if her knowledge about electricity and conduction applies to alien lightning monsters, then he should feasibly be able to control his energy output so he doesn't create the residuals that could harm Kevin if he's not in metal mode, as well as rapidly draining him if he does wind up with a sudden influx of unwanted energy. Seeing the benefit in this, and wanting to help his best friend in whatever way he can, Ben sets to work on this, even if it is a lot of meditation and self-control exercises with Gwen that make you want to jump out of his skin. All the same, this hard work does pay off in a very tangible way, as a few weeks after the clash with Vilgax, a Nosedenian begins trashing some new store called Mr. Smoothie and absorbing all their energy to make copies of itself. Having dealt with megawatts before, Ben is quick to jump into action as feedback, though to the pint-sized pest's dismay, he gives off no energy which they can consume, or even draining the juice they've already taken, putting them to sleep and making this a slam dunk for Team Tennyson. Or at least, it would be if the Omnitrix did not partially overload from all Ben's recent messing around with energy, so that he finds himself remaining as feedback long after he should have timed out. While at first Ben assumes that this is an upgrade, like some form of master control, he quickly discovers this to be false, when he tries and fails to make himself revert to human so he can go home. Seeing that he is stuck as an alien, Ben decides to crash with Grandpa Max for the night, and the next night, and the next night, with the old man having to pretend he and Ben went camping to explain the boy's absence to his parents as they don't know about the Omnitrix. Finally, at the end of the week, the sound of timing out fills the rust bucket, though this moment of elation quickly becomes disappointment when instead of becoming human, Ben instead transforms into Wild Mutt. Unfortunately, this problem persists for another week, with the boy next becoming Eye Guy, which proves a rather confronting experience going from no eyes to many, and then after that into Accelerate, which means a week of high-speed mayhem. By now, Max has made several attempts to get Azimuth's help, though after having his appointment delayed 10 times, he takes matters into his own hands and borrows a spaceship, declaring that he'll go to Galvan Prime himself if he has to. As they are now on school break, Gwen, Lucy, and Kevin come along too, with Max therefore getting a larger craft than in canon to fit them all. Touching down on Galvan Prime, Team Tennyson then make their way to Azimuth's laboratory, only to be met by another dismissal as the cantankerous old scientist claims that Ben's condition is a low priority issue, so they should come back in 2 years. However, this attitude promptly changes when a highly excited and curious trio of Ben, Kevin, and Lucy begin trashing his lab, forcing Azimuth to intervene as he simply slaps a certain spot on the Omnitrix's dial, thus reverting Ben back to human at last. While Ben is a bit disappointed as this means the end of non-stop hero time, Max is immensely relieved, ordering the kids to wait outside the lab while he has a word with Azimuth. Unfortunately, there was never any hope of this instruction being followed, especially when the kids spot a commotion in the distance, and while Gwen and even Lucy do urge the boys to listen to Grandpa Max, Ben and Kevin have already made up their minds as they take off in the direction of trouble. As it turns out, the source is an emaciated-looking galvanic mechamorph with yellow traces rather than the usual green, causing the boys to smirk that they didn't know upgrades could get sick. Angrily, the mechamorph declares that he is not sick, he is Malware, and he has come to make Azimuth right a long overdue wrong. Still casual, Kevin tells the techno-organic alien to take a number, while Ben declares that in the meantime he'll make him pay for his rampaging. Having missed his favourite form these last few weeks, it is not hard to anticipate who his transformation will be, with him slamming down the dial and becoming Feedback, who grins that it's good to be back. Meanwhile, Kevin bends down to take hold of one of the tiny Galvan vehicles, using it to coat himself in metal as he grins that he's ready to show Ben what he's been working on if he'll just give him a little juice. Having faith in his best friend, as well as himself to stop the situation if it gets out of hand, the young brunette fires a jolt of energy Kevin's way, with the scruffy youth quickly drawing it in and setting his fist to glowing even brighter than they did on Vilgax's ship. As one, the boys then rush Malware, proving once again why they're one of the best tag teams in the galaxy, as when Ben goes high, Kevin goes low, his punch is now empowered with pure energy, to the point where if Malware had the bones his gaunt appearance suggests, then they would be broken by the impact. No one to be outdone, Ben shows off his own achievement as well, firing off small concentrated orbs of energy which act like mines detonating on contact with Malware and refueling Kevin with the aftershocks. Unsurprisingly, the Mechamorph is no match for this pairing, with it seeming as though he is doomed to an early grave, if not for luck favouring him, as in an attempt to show off to each other against a villain they deem as no threat, they send him flying, only for him to land right where he wants to be. Azimuth's lab. At once, all thought of these children leaves the Mechamorph's mind, as he demands Azimuth fix him, though the Galvan grumpily protests that he needs more time, since the helix he's been building for Malware is still incomplete. However, this is totally unacceptable to the rogue Mechamorph, who bellows that he's done waiting, before attempting to steal the device for himself, only to be mocked by Azimuth's assistant Albedo, who sneers that no one can understand the helix aside from himself and Azimuth, so if this oaf attempts to use it, he'll just blow himself up. Unfortunately for Albedo, such hubris comes back to bite him almost immediately, as while one of Malware's hands closes around the helix, the other takes hold of Albedo himself, with the villain growling that if this is the case, then he will just have the little wretch do it for him. With this grim pronouncement and his twin prizes in hand, Malware then sets off for the moon of Galvan B and the site of the original helix, which Azimuth surmises he intends to combine with the new one to rewrite his life code. Having overheard all of this, Ben questions if Malware really came to him for help, only for Azimuth to say he'd get around to it, with the grumpy Galvan retorting that the boy underestimates the amount he has on his plate as first thinker. From the look Ben gives in return, it is clear that he does not consider this a valid excuse, though all the same, Team Tennyson along with Azimuth waste no time in pursuing Malware, and thanks to having a larger ship, everyone can come this time. Due to this more powerful craft, the heroes arrive not long after Malware, though sadly they are not in time to save the other Mechamorphs who have been drained to the point of near death, with Max, Lucy and Azimuth staying behind while Ben, Gwen and Kevin head into the primary helix, as they have no doubt this is where their target will be. In this they are correct, finding the rogue upgrade and his Galvan prisoner hard at work, though when he sees them, Malware's attention shifts entirely to driving away these humans, as he will not have Azimuth's lackeys hold him back after waiting for so long. Due to having timed out on the way here, Ben is forced to take a back seat for the initial stage of this fight, with Gwen and Kevin showing off their own teamwork which is almost on par with Ben and Kevin's, as Gwen handles things from range, while Kevin gets in close to keep the villain occupied. Together they are more than capable of holding Malware off, but when Ben enters the fray as well, the fight is over in no time flat. However, even in defeat Malware will not go quietly, howling Azimuth's name and cursing him for creating him like this and then abandoning him in favour of his perfect projects. While Ben and Gwen have little sympathy for such histrionics, Kevin pauses, questioning if this plan with the helix will really fix him, to which Malware confirms that it will, stating that his life code will be corrected, and he will no longer be the aberration among his kind that the children see before them. Casually, Kevin replies that he should do it then, urging his friends to stand aside, since he knows what Malware's going through, as it's the same pain he was in before he met the Tennysons and they gave him a chance, so why not give Malware the same opportunity? Ardently, Gwen protests that this is different, since if it was just about helping someone in trouble of course she'd agree, but Azimuth said this procedure had to be done just right, and that neither Albedo nor the Helix are ready for that. Though just as fiercely, Kevin protests that in that case, Azimuth should get his grey butt in here, and help Malware so he can fix his mistake. Sighing, Gwen replies that he already said he was working on it, though here Ben cuts in, agreeing with his best friend that Azimuth probably hasn't been giving it the focus it needs, considering he waved them off until it personally affected him, before adding that when something's important, you gotta make time for it, like how she studies, he worked to better control Feedback's energy and Kevin learned to mix his powers safely. Having no real counter-argument for this, Gwen shows signs of relenting, though before Malware can go for the helix, Kevin stops him, firmly stating that what Ben said cuts both ways, since while he gets that the Mechamorph is angry, lashing out and going off half-cocked isn't gonna get him what he wants, so he needs to chill and let Azimuth do what he needs to do, promising that if Malware can show a little restraint, then he, Kevin, will make sure Azimuth gives this matter appropriate attention, a slight hint of menace in the implication. Unfortunately, it seems Malware is in no mood for more empty promises as he calls them, readying himself to fight his way to the helix if need be. that is until the voice of Azimuth himself calls out for his creation to stop. Stepping into the room with Max and Lucy by his side, the Galvan begrudgingly acknowledges that perhaps he, the smartest being in 3 galaxies, arguably 5, can learn something from these children, as there is truth to the accusations leveled against him, since he did put his own pursuits first. When as first thinker, he should have been thinking about everyone, so for that, he apologizes. No one is quite sure what to say to this moment of humility from Azimuth of all people, though due to still being an irascible old crank, the scientist is quick to return to form as he waddles over to where Albedo is working and chides him for being sloppy as ever, while telling him to move aside and he'll handle this, since if they keep using Albedo's handiwork, it'll likely just overcharge Malware, turning him into some kind of mutant, with this seeing the assistant storm away to sulk and stew. As for Malware, he watches Azimuth with evident distrust, asking what his creator is doing, to which the first thinker answers that he's correcting a long overdue mistake, while promising to give Malware's problem his full attention. He just asks that he be patient with him, since as he said, this will take time. In a low tone, the monstrous mechamorph growls that he has already waited hundreds of years. So, he supposes what is a bit more time. As he says this, the animosity slowly begins leaking from his voice, as the sight of Azimuth making a genuine effort goes a long way to quell his rage. Meanwhile, wanting to help, Team Tennyson question if there is anything they can do, though dismissively, Azimuth replies the work he has ahead of him is far too delicate for their giant clumsy hands, though if they want to be useful, they can inform his other assistants where he has gone and what he is doing, so they don't think he's run off to Xenon again. Nodding respectfully, Max promises to do so. While sharing a look, Kevin mutters to Ben, Gwen and Lucy that he's still not sure if he likes Azimuth or not, since he's kind of a selfish jerk. All the same, the heroes bid Azimuth, Albedo and Malware goodbye, with the rogue mechamorph expressing his gratitude and naming Kevin something he's never had before, a friend, since it was his words that won over Azimuth. In turn, the boy tells him to drop him a line sometime, since he'd love to learn more about him as a fusion of tech and organic, not to mention his ability to absorb stuff makes them kinda similar, so maybe they can learn something from each other, with Malware agreeing to do so once his life code has been corrected. As a result, when Team Tennyson reboard their ship and take off, it is with a feeling of immense satisfaction at having saved 2 planets and an unquantifiable amount of life forms. Though, as they set their sights on home, there is no doubt in any of their minds that there will be lots of other problems that require their solving back on planet Earth. And that's where we'll leave things. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts, suggestions, or screams of rage in the comments below.